Why is that you have to work on something, but end up rushing by the end of the deadline? Or why is that you want to do something, but just end up procrastinating and actually not doing anything about it? As it turns out, there are three forces that you have to fight with. Welcome! My name is Daniel, and after this video, you have the tools to actually stop procrastinating and start doing the things you want and have to do. Procrastination is a term that everyone has heard about, but it's a broad term, and after thinking about it, I saw that there are actually three things that lead to procrastinating. And in this video, I will break those down. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. The first enemy that causes you to procrastinate is confusion. Now, when I was in high school, I was on a homeschooling, and we've had to pass one exam from every subject from the whole yearly material. And if we wouldn't pass this exam, we would get thrown out of the school. So it was serious for me. And while I did good with my subjects, there was this one subject that caused me a bit of a headache, because it was history. And every single time I sat down to study history, I thought, oh, it's so dry. Okay, let's just force myself to study it. And before actually studying, I had to spend 20 minutes at least to figure out what I will actually study, because I didn't have textbooks back then. From where will I study it, and actually what topics do I have to cover in this study session? And it led me to spending a lot of time not studying actually, and getting not satisfying grades from that. But then I've found a way around that and actually made myself improve the marks I've gotten. And it's about gaining clarity. Now, when you don't know what you're going to do, your mind just has trouble to convince you to do it, because it's uncertain, it's full of doubts, it's actually like an unknown territory. So why would you go there? That's why. We want to bring clarity into our learning sessions, work, by answering three questions. Why am I doing what I'm doing? What am I actually going to do? And how am I going to do that? For example, why am I going to study history? Well, I have to pass the exam. So, what do I have to cover? I have to focus on the topics that are in a curriculum and check up the topics that are going to be the most possible, probable on the exam. And how am I going to do that? Well, I can find like 2 YouTube channels, 3 blogs that talk about history, and as an addition, go to ChatGPT. So now, knowing why am I actually going to study, what topics I've picked, because it would be good to not only ask this question, but actually write those things down, or at least be clear about them. And now I also know how am I going to study. So when I sit down to do that stuff I want to do, I don't doubt what I'm going to do. I just straight out jump into it. Now, to leave you with one micro step. Figure out what are you actually going to do way before doing that. For example, instead of studying math, you can say, okay, I'll check the basics, fundamentals of logarithm, or of triangles. Or instead of saying, okay, I will write my essay, I'll just say instead, what I will do is write the hypothesis that I'm going to argue in favor of, and main points. That is this, this, and this. And then I can build on that. The second enemy that causes you to procrastinate is starting friction. Now, some time ago I was sitting in front of my desk, working on a computer wanting to work from a computer on my app. I thought, okay, I'm going to work on, translating my app. But then I think, but you know what? Actually, I have to not only translate it, I have to create some kind of language bank. I have to create a new state for that. I have to add additional logic to it. Oh, that's a lot of work. So I end up procrastinating and put it off for a few days. But then I tell myself, okay, what can I do in literally a few moments of work? I can actually create the variable that will hold my chosen language. And I do that, just that. And it's easier to start working. From then I work on fixing some bugs, then I actually add the language bug, then I can add translations, and from this starting point, it became easier to start working. Because in physics, there's this Newton's first law of motion, that object at rest will stay at rest, and object in motion will continue moving. And it's the same when you start to do the work. It's the toughest, the hardest part of the process, because it requires the most energy to go from state resting to state moving. But when you are moving, you continue moving. So we're going to need to gain simplicity. That is, ask yourself this. If I would break it down so much that I have to do one task that takes 2 minutes, what would I do? Like, break the task down so much that the starting mini task that you have to do is so simple, so quick, it's actually silly and embarrassing to not do that. So, your action step in here is to create warm-up tasks. For example, instead of, okay, I have to work for the next half hour, 1 hour, and do my physical activities training. Instead of that, literally, okay, I'll just warm up for 2 minutes. Or I have to work on that new character that I have to draw and animate. It's going to take so much work. Tell yourself instead, alright, you know what? I'll just sit down and draw the outline of the character. It's going to take like 2 minutes to create a first sketch of it. And from then, it's easier to keep moving. Now, the first enemy that causes you to procrastinate are fear and discomfort. Now, there was this one time when I was at the event, and as I sit in a hall, the organization staff speaks through the microphone and says, alright, listen up. We will leave this microphone here on the podium, and if any one of you will want to share what have you experienced this year, feel free to do that. And they leave the microphone on the podium. And I sit there like leaning back and think to myself, nice, I'm actually curious what others will share with the people here. But as the people share their things, in the back of my mind, I start to formulate my own speech. And then when I catch myself, I think, wait, no, I'm not here for that. But yeah, I end up deciding that I will share the experience I've had. But it's tough to unprepared, on the spot, just get up and through the microphone do a public speaking. So back then I feel my throat is getting dry. It's actually closing off. I feel tingles in my arms and legs. And I think myself, oh, okay, I won't do that. But I feel like I have to because it's going to improve me, like push me out of my comfort zone. But it's scary, like what am I going to say even? So I decide to do something funny. Because I tell myself, okay, 20 seconds. Okay, I'll just go there and yeah, I'll just say hi and say the main point I want to discuss. And that's it, I can just go off the stage. So, when there's a silence in the hall, because no one now wants to add anything new, I stand up, walk slowly to the podium, grab the microphone, and silently just stare at the audience for a few seconds. And then I start my speech. And as the 20 seconds that I've given myself pass by, I see that not only I've said an intro, I've also shared a micro story, I've shared the main experience, I've connected it to the event I was at, I also shared the main point and the lesson from that, and at the end I just put down the microphone, slowly walk back to my seat, and as I sit down, I literally feel like a boss. It wasn't something that was significant, I didn't give the best of the speeches there, but because I did something that actually was uncomfortable, that I was scared, afraid to do, I've gained so much energy that for the rest of the event, I was really confident, easygoing, and just relaxed, feeling good about myself. And it all touches on the idea of 20 seconds of courage. Now, there's this one movie, We Bought a Zoo, and it shows a guy who sees a beautiful lady in a cafe. As he walks through the street, he sees her through the window. And he literally stops in his tracks, looks at her, and thinks, I want to talk to her. but she's way out of my league. So he says, alright, 20 seconds. I'm going there, saying hi, and going out. And he literally does that. He enters the cafe, walks up to her and says, "Hi, I see that you're alone here. Why is that?" And from this moment, the conversation just starts flowing, and furious forward, she becomes his wife. And when he has a son, he tells him those words. You know, sometimes all you need is 20 seconds of insane courage. Just literally 20 seconds of just embarrassing bravery. And I promise you, something great will come out of it. And this guy, Benjamin, tells that to his son, Dylan. And the boy actually uses this advice to do the same thing his father did and gets himself a girl. Now, what he was talking about is that after those 20 seconds, something great will come out of it. And there is this great quote. Joey Schweitzer once said, "When you overcome resistance and discomfort, you absorb their power. The greater they are, the greater the power." And I've experienced this myself during this public speaking story. When I passed the 20 seconds mark, I've actually started to speak freely. And when I finished the speech, I felt empowered. So, what's the action step for you from that? When you feel like procrastinating to do something because it's scary, it's full of discomfort, just remember to be courageous. Remember to give yourself 20 seconds of courage. And keep in the back of your mind that at the end, after those 20 seconds, after you overcome this resistance, this discomfort, you will absorb its power. So imagine that you have to go to the doctor, but you know you'll feel sick, weak, uncomfortable, whatever you will feel, it's not going to be pleasant. So you procrastinate, but then you tell yourself, okay, 20 seconds, I will just call the doctor, I will talk with them for 20 seconds. Let's set up the meeting, and then whatever happens, happens. And remember that after this, you will feel better. Now, the 3 enemies that we've covered in this video are confusion, starting friction, and fear and discomfort. And you beat those by adding clarity, simplicity, and courage. Now, imagine this. You have to work on your project. And because you do it consistently, without missing any day, you actually finish way before the deadline and have time to spend it with your friends, with your family, or even with your pet.